Okay everyone, Mr. Voikin here, and we're going to take a look at Unit 3, Lesson 7, calculating the surface area and volume of prisms and cylinders. So, first of all, what is a prism? Well, it is a three-dimensional shape that has two identical ends that we call the base and the top, and they are also parallel to each other. So if we look right here, we've got three prisms. Now, this one on the left is a triangular prism, and there is our base, and here is our top, and again they are identical and parallel to each other. In between, this would be considered as the height of the object. The next two objects are basically the same thing. It says rectangular prism and square-based prism. And another name for a square-based prism is a cube. So basically with a cube, it just means that all of the sides are the exact same dimension. Now again, just like the triangular prism, in a rectangular or square-based prism, we have a base and we have a top, which are the two ends that are identical in shape and parallel to each other, and in between these connecting lines create the height of the object. And the same is true for our cube, and like I mentioned earlier, these heights right here would all be the same. Okay, so how do we calculate the surface area? Well, what is surface area? Surface area is everything that you can touch. So I can touch this side right here, I can touch the base down here, I can touch the top right here, I can touch like the back of this object, and I can touch this side right here. So when we look at the triangular base prism, it has a base, a top, and then three sides. The rectangular prism and the cubes all have a base, a top, and four sides. So basically we just need to be able to calculate the area of each one of those sides and then add them all together. And the next one is calculating the volume of a prism. And to do that, all we're going to do is determine what is the area of this base, and then to that we're going to multiply the area of the base times the height. So this one is just the area of the base times the height. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the formulas that we're going to need to make these calculations. Now, you will be provided with a formula sheet when you're doing a test, but these are pretty standard and basic calculations, and you should, at this point in your math career, have these memorized. So, the first thing we're going to look at is the perimeter. So what is the perimeter? Well, it's the distance around the outside of an object. So all we're going to do is just take a look at the edges, and we're going to add those all up. So on my shape that I have in front of me right here, if I'm calculating the perimeter of the top of this cube, it's the length of that side plus the length of that side plus the length of that side plus the length of that side right there. Okay, now what is circumference? Well, circumference is the perimeter of a circle. So if we have a circle such as this, the circumference is the distance all the way around that circle. Now, how do we calculate circumference? Well, I've got two calculations right here. Circumference equals pi times diameter, and although pi is 3.14, we will be using the function available on the calculator, so you should have a button that will reference the pi with all of its infinite decimals. So it's pi times diameter, and because diameter equals 2 times radius, we can derive this formula right here, which is 2 pi r, 2 times pi times radius. Okay, next we got to look at the area of very simple shapes, such as a rectangle, a square, a parallelogram, triangle, circle, and a trapezoid. So to figure out the area of a rectangle, it is just the length times the width right here. Now on a square, the length and width are the same dimensions, so we can just call that side squared. Or it's the same here as side times side, which is the same as really length times width. Okay, with a parallelogram, it's basically a rectangle or a square that has been sort of pushed on the top, and so it's sort of leaning over. And we have a height, and the height is not the length of the side right here, but it's rather the height of the object coming off perpendicular from this base down here that we've called B. So to calculate the area, of a parallelogram, it is just base times height. Now what about for a triangle? Well, any triangle will have a base, which is the bottom of the length of the triangle, and a height, which again comes off perpendicular from our base. So in this case, what we're going to be doing is going base times height divided by 2. Okay, and moving on to the circle. The area of a circle, we need to know the radius. So if they give you the diameter, we can just divide that in 2 to calculate the radius. And that is just going to be pi times the radius squared. And the last shape we have right here is a trapezoid. And you can see right here that basically both of these edges have been pushed in right here, leaving A and B to be parallel to each other, in which case I will still have a height going up and down here that is perpendicular to this base that's on the bottom. Okay, that's a B. So what is the formula for this? Well, it is take 1/2 of the height and multiply that to A plus B. And notice that that is contained within the brackets, so you need to add A and B together first before you multiply it by 1/2 the height. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the conversion factors that we're going to need for any calculations in this lesson. You can see on the first line that we have a 1 centimeter cubed, or 1 cubic centimeter, is equal to 1 milliliter. And with gallons to liters, there's actually 2 different conversion rates here, depending on if we're talking about the US gallon or the UK gallon. So from either Britain or the United States, they're different. In the United States, 1 gallon is equal to 3.7854 liters. And in the UK, 1 gallon is equal to 4.546 liters. Why are they different? I don't know, and I don't care. Okay, so what about the other one that we see here, pints? Well, a pint is a smaller unit of volume, and there are 8 pints in 1 US gallon. Okay, now, if you have to do any calculations on a test, you will be provided with any of these conversion factors before doing the test. And if for some reason I want you to memorize a conversion factor, you will be given ample notice so that you have time to memorize that. So these are done the same way we do any type of conversions. So for example, if I'm taking 4.6 US gallons and I want to convert that into liters, we're just going to take our 4.6 US gallons and we're going to multiply that by a conversion rate, putting US gallons on the bottom, liters on the top, and we know that 1 US gallon is equal to 3.7854 liters. The units for gallons will cancel each other out, leaving us with 4.6 times 3.7854 and eventually divided by 1, which we don't need to do because dividing by 1 is not going to change anything. So in this case, if we punch that into our calculator, we're going to end up with 17.41284 liters, because that's the units we're left with once the gallons cancel each other out. And if you were asked to round this to the nearest hundredth, the answer would be 17.41 liters. All right, so let's move into some calculations. So here we have a triangular based prism, and it says that it is an isosceles triangle, which basically means that it is a triangle where the left and right side are going to be the same, basically splitting this triangle in half here. So if we look at the dimensions on it, I can see the height is set at 7. The base is going to be 15, and this other height right here, which is the height of the triangle, not the height of the prism, is 24. So there's two different heights here. We got the height of the triangle and we have the height of the prism. So if we're going to calculate the surface area, basically we might need to do a few other calculations prior to that. So you can see that I don't have this dimension right here, which is going to be necessary to calculate the area of this side piece right here. So what we want to do is split this thing up into its shapes. So I have a base and a top, and I can see that both of these have a base that is 15 and a height that is 24. Okay, now what other sides do I have? Well, I've got the side that's along the back, which is right here. And then I have two identical sides because it's an isosceles triangle, which would be the sides that we see right here. Now, like I said earlier, we're missing that dimension right there. So if I can still fill in a few other dimensions. The height of this is 7. And sorry, I'm just trying to change colors there. The height of these are both 7. The width of this base right here is 15. This one again has a height of 24 in there, forming a perpendicular line going off the base. And I need to figure out what this is down here, this X. So to do that, I'm basically going to end up using half of this triangle right here. So half of the base on this would be 7.5. Now, why am I using only half of it? Because that's going to form a right angle triangle where I've got a height of 24. I've got a base of 7.5, which is half of that. And now I want to figure out what is the length of that side. So that's going to be C equals the square root of 24 squared plus 7.5 squared. And you can punch this directly into your calculator, and when you do so, you're going to end up with 25.145. So that means this side right here is 24.145, and this is 25.145. So to calculate this shape, and this shape, which are just rectangles, we're just going to do length times width. And when you calculate those out, 7 times 15 is 105, and 24.145 times 7 is 169.015, and that would be the same for both of these. And now to calculate the surface area of these triangles, the base and the top, it's going to be base, which is 15, times the height, which is 24, and divide that by 2. And that is going to calculate out to 180. So this has a surface area of 180. This has a surface area of 180. Now I just need to take the base, I'm going to add that to the top, add that to one side, and add that to my other two sides. And what I end up with is 803.03. And what are my units? I need to look back at my triangle. I see they're in meters. So the units for this are going to be meters squared. Now, what about the volume? Well, the volume is actually really easy to calculate, and we remember that it's just the base of our prism times the height of the prism. And we already did that calculation right here. It is 180 on the base. So basically, I'm just going to take 180, multiply that by my height, which is right on the side here, that is 7. So multiply that by 7, and when we calculate that out, we have 1,260 meters, and in this case, volume is going to be cubed. All right, so let's move into a rectangular or square-based prism, and in this case, it's rectangular as all of the sides are different dimensions. So we've got our base, which is going to be 29 by 21. I've got my top, which is 29 by 21. I've got one side, which has an identical side, which is 29 by 14 on each of those. And I have two shorter sides that are going to be 21 by 14 and 21 by 14. So to calculate the area of each of those rectangles, it's just going to be length times width. So 21 times 29 is going to be 609. And again, for that one, 14 times 29 is 406. And again for that, and 14 times 21 is 294. Now to calculate the total surface area, I'm just going to go 2 times 609 plus 2 times 406 plus 2 times 294. And when you multiply that out, we get 2618. Now let's just confirm the units. So we look up here, I've got millimeters, millimeters, and millimeters, and they're saying what is the surface area in millimeters squared. So the provided units are the same as the units they want in the answer, so I can just leave it as such and make sure that I put a square there as we're talking about area. Okay, and now what about the volume of this shape? Well, right away you should see that they're asking for the answer in centimeters cubed, and like we already indicated, they're in millimeters. So I'm going to need to do some unit conversions first. So remember that volume is just base times the height. Well, the base is the base of the prism, which is going to be 29 times 21. Now those are millimeters, and converted to centimeters, it's an easy conversion. That just is just 2.9 times 2.1. The height was 14 millimeters, and that is going to convert into 1.4 centimeters. Now the base is 2.9 times 2.1 is going to be 6.09 times 1.4, and when I multiply that out, I get 6.3336, and again, if we're going to round that to the hundredth, that's going to be 6.33, and our units are centimeters cubed. All right, let's take a look at this shape, which is a cylinder. So it is basically have a shape that has a circular base. That's not very circular, is it? Another circular top, again, not very circular, and a rectangular side. Okay, now let's take a look what we've got here. They want it in centimeters, but they've provided us with inches. They've also provided us with a diameter, so I really want to have a radius. So 36 divided by 2 is 18, so the radius equals 18 inches. Now, inches to centimeters is 2 times multiplying the inches by 2.54. So when I multiply 18 times the 2.54, I'm going to end up with 45.72 centimeters. Now the height is also in inches, and again I would multiply it by 2.54 to make that easy conversion. And when we do that, we end up with 38.1 centimeters. So now that I'm in the correct units, I can start to fill in some of the information on the shapes that I have down below. So the top and the base are going to have a radius equal to 45.72, and the rectangular side is going to have a height of 38.1. But what is that length, or that for this rectangular side that we're going to pull off of the cylinder? Well, it doesn't give us that, but if we look, it will actually be sort of the circumference that goes around here. That is the length of that rectangle. So how do we calculate the circumference? Well, the circumference equals pi d, which is 2 pi r, which is equal to, let's see if I can find my notes here, 2 times pi times the 45.72. And when we do that calculation, we end up with 287.267. So 287.267. Now I need to multiply that by its height of 31. And when I do that, I get 10944.8815. Now what about the surface area of these two circles? Well, that is pi r squared. And again, the radius is 45.72, so that's going to be pi times 45.72 squared. And when we calculate that out, we get 6566.9289, which would be the same for the top, as they are identical. Now, what do we end up with right here? Well, to calculate the total surface area of this object, I'm going to take 10944.8815. I'm going to add that to 2 times this number right here for the area of the circles, and we get a total of 24078.73935. And if I'm going to round that, you can see that the 9 is going to push that 3 up to a 4. So what we end up with is 24078.74. And again, our units are going to be centimeters squared. Okay, so let's take a look at the last part of this question, which is saying calculate the volume and put it into US gallons. So remember again, that basically what we want to do is take the base of this and multiply that by the height. Now right now we're in centimeters, so we see that the base is going to be 6566.9289 times the height, which is 38.1, and that is going to multiply out to 250,199.9911, and that will have the units of centimeters cubed. Now looking at some of our conversion factors, I can now change that into milliliters, and basically it is the same number, except now converted to a different unit, millimeters. Now what do we want to do? We want to eventually get to gallons. The conversion factors that we have compare gallons to liters, so we now need to take milliliters and change that into liters. And to do that, I'm just going to take that decimal and I'm going to move it left 3 positions. So we're going to end up with 250.1999911 liters. Okay, so now we need to take that and we need to input that into a calculation to convert that to gallons. So I've got 250.1999911, and that's going to be liters. I'm going to multiply that by, well, I want liters on the bottom and I want gallons up top, and I know that 1 gallon is 3.7854 liters, and these are US gallons, and that causes me to cross out my units for the liters, leaving me with USG. So it's going to be 250.1999911 divided by 3.7854, and when you multiply that out, you're going to get 66.09605, and we'll round that to 2 decimal places, which will be 66.10, and it is US gallons. Oh yeah, happy face. All right, well there we have it, and I hope this will be helpful for you. You need to now complete all the work, page 170 to 174, whole bunch of questions similar to the ones that I just exampled out for you, and don't forget to check your answers while you're moving along to make sure you're doing things right. Page 174, enjoy.